just watched this amazing virtual reality demonstration, and it's like, yeah, but what's next? And by the way, Martin, thanks for inviting me here to follow the coolest demonstration we've seen today. Okay. Where are we? Okay. Okay, a couple of things I want to get straight. I am English. I know it doesn't sound like it. I've been in America for a long time. So, but I am a little disturbed by what's happened since I've left England. I left in 2004. What the hell's been going on here? It's pretty amazing. Of course, everything's really running really smoothly in America. Nothing to worry about there at all. Okay, so I think we'll kick off by getting into a video that shows a little bit about what's going on in Katerra. Let's go into it. Okay. What? Oh my God. Okay, I'm kidding. What I actually have to say is like, so yeah, I've been in the US for a while, and the last time I was in this building, I was actually watching Bill Gates launch Windows 98, so I had to do a little homage because he had a big disaster with that launch. So I thought I'd see what it felt like. So yeah, lots been happening in my life. I started in Revit. Well, I started as an architect, and then worked in residential construction in England. Started to find out that I was using computer-aided design more than a lot of people, and started to become more of my life than architecture. Joined a little company called Revit, Charles River software company. Everyone knows where that went. I was in Autodesk for about 8 years. Really great experience, and hello to anyone from Autodesk, by the way, who's either online or in the audience. Then spent a lot of time working in other industries. I worked in medical devices, I worked with marketing technologies, language, automatic translations, translation management systems. And it's really great experiences right outside of the architectural world, outside of the construction world. And it's given me a lot of perspective as I come back. And I'm starting to think about what has and hasn't changed. So the last time I was here in England, and the last time I was doing a presentation here, that was my phone. That was the most popular toy, which is kind of ironic, Bob the Builder. This was the guy I was speaking to most of the time. It was back in 2001, and this is what I was speaking to him about, which was Revit 2.1. And even though, earlier, Martin said he's sick of seeing, rethinking construction, what's really struck me as I come back is, well, two things. One, the passion and enthusiasm in this industry to solve these long-term problems, but two, how many of those challenges are still with us. And I think when I found Katerra, or they found me, I thought to myself, why would this company be a company that could make a difference in this world? Why isn't this just going to be another piece of technology or another attempt to solve problems that fundamentally could fail again? And even though it's clear that there is hugely compelling needs and reasons to go into this, how are we going to make sure that this is something that can really succeed? So I want to spend most of this conversation showing you what we're doing at Katerra. There is going to be technology. I'll show you a little bit of software. It's going to look a little boring after that last presentation, okay? We aren't launching software into the market till at least the end of this year, if not next year. But I can give you a little taste about the way we're thinking about it and tell you about what we're using internally so that if there's any questions we can have about that and any conversations we can maybe learn something together. But first, I am going to let my president give you an idea of what Katerra is all about.
We won't pave the way for the future of building by repeating history. On the job site, on the factory floor, in the lab, we're examining everything. When it all comes together, it's a thing of beauty. Technology drives every single thing we do. We use the best tools available. And when we can't find what we need, we make it. But it's not just a tool we use, or just a product we make. It's how we work. It's how we think. How we move forward. How we build. Technology isn't the end goal. It's how we get there. We're constantly creating, testing, improving, pushing each other to go further, looking at the problems everyone thought were unfixable. Every day is a new opportunity to ask ourselves, how could this be done better, faster, smarter? Always balancing what could change the world tomorrow with what will work in the real world today. So our best ideas aren't ideas at all. They're already here.
Okay. So, who are Katerra? What are we all about? Well, Katerra formed in 2015, and now we're over 5,000 people. Just let that sink in for a moment. And we've taken people from just about every industry that we believe has the knowledge and the experience to move us forward. Obviously, a lot of names on there you recognize. When we were looking for the best technologists, we went to Google. We looked at Autodesk. We looked at EA Sports. When we're looking for people who really understood devices, we had GoPro to lean on and HP. Same when we're looking at manufacturing know-how, we were looking at Flextronics. How do we run the best production lines on the planet? Let's go to the guys like Boeing and find out how they're doing it. So we're really looking to assemble like the best possible team to address every element of the whole building process. And I think if you read the précis for this presentation, there is some fundamental thinking in Katerra which isn't like you normally experience in a 5,000-person kind of construction company. It's a different culture. It's a very different way of thinking. There's a phrase which actually Michael, who you heard there, Michael Marks uses. I think he has it hanging on his wall, which is, it's not the large companies that consume the small companies. It's the fast companies that consume the slower. And that ability to adapt, that ability to move and be responsive, it's just pure Darwinism. It's really understanding what are the things that you need to do to truly make a difference, to truly change that 1% productivity line and move it up more to where our peers are in other industries. And so our timeline looked like this. So founded 2015. By the end of 2016, we were in the top 25 multifamily residential developers in the US in 1 year. And in 2017, we had 15 projects breaking new ground, and this is the one that blows my mind. By the end of 2018, 700 plus projects in progress. We bought 4 architectural firms. I think we bought 3 engineering firms. We bought, I think it's 10 construction firms. And you can see how many factories we've opened and how many operational facilities that we have. When you look at us on a worldwide stage, starting in the USA, we have about 20 locations in the US. And you can see that's factories, that's engineering offices, that's CLT factories. I'll come on to that a little bit later. And worldwide, we're already having quite a significant footprint. I'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing in India and the Middle East further in the presentation. But yes, we have factories in China. Yes, we have got factories in India. And yes, we're looking at just about every type of material, every type of process, everything that you need to put into the whole of the construction supply chain for us to be truly in control and understand how to be more productive. So this vertical integration of the supply chain really comes from our founders. Michael and his team formed a company called Flextronics, which is Flex now it's known as. And you can think of it like actually something like this device. If you wanted to make this device 10,000, 1 million times, then Flex is where you'd go to get it made. It's a little like Foxconn. And the only way that they can compete, the only way that they can truly work at volume with the best possible price at the highest possible quality is to be in complete control of their supply chain. Everything that goes into it kind of effectively has a Flextronics kind of logo on it somewhere in that device. And this kind of way of working is very common in manufacturing and in electronics. It's not a new idea. It's been going on for at least 2, if not 3 decades. And when you see the companies that truly emerge to be successful, even in the downturns, these companies are the ones that take market share because they're really optimizing everything they're doing around quality, around their speed to market, and the cost of the final device. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So what do we have in terms of market experience? Well, you heard all the firms I talked about, okay? For me, it's a fascinating experience because I've nearly always been on the software side or just on the design side. You know, I can have a meeting on Monday in our HQ, and I'm sitting there with maybe some of the people who are looking at the internal systems. Then I can be out in the factory, the CLT factory, and I might be sitting down with some clients who are reviewing the quality and controls around how we're doing our CLT production. Next day, I could be with the architect's office in Seattle, sitting there with the engineers and the architects and looking at how they're going to put these processes together, how they're going to put together designs that are based around constructability. You know, and every part of that process is available to us in Katerra to look at. There are no barriers. It's kind of a pretty wonderful world not to have these contractual barriers in the way when you're actually trying to look at how you solve a problem at an enterprise level. I mean, yes, we go deep, but we're kind of becoming T-shaped. Nearly everything we do, we have to think about it at an enterprise level. So what does that mean? So yeah, complete material expertise. So it doesn't matter if it's wood frame, light gauge steel, mass timber, precast concrete. We manufacture all these things ourselves. We have our own factories. Same when we look at robotic manufacturing. We buy the expertise in, we create our own factories, we run our own production lines, and if we need to, we write our own software to support it. When it comes to using technology, we're going to talk a little bit later in the presentation about what we're doing with our Apollo initiative, but everything that we do has a technology element, but technology is not the driver. Technology is what empowers us understanding the systems and processes and the use of those materials, and then figuring out how to make the best use of that. And that technology is really nearly always orientated about how can we make a better, earlier decision? How can we have the right information contextually at the right time such that we make a better decision than anybody else? That's our competitive advantage. That's the way we get better. So let's talk a little bit about this productized approach. Before I go, well, actually, no, I'll go into it. So this productized approach is really fundamentally important to us, and it blew my mind when I got into the company and the things we were making. It's kind of, why aren't we buying HVAC systems? The answer was because we don't think they work very well. So we're going to manufacture our own, and I'll talk about that now. But first, here's an example of the way we're thinking a little bit differently about modularization. I think right at the beginning of the day, you heard from Martin about this. What did you call them? These kind of on the back of a truck, kind of container-shaped buildings. There's a place for those. There really is. You know, there really is a place for those in modularization and prefabrication and construction. But we don't think it's the full answer. So we make these bathroom kits, and they're like transformers, like robots in disguise. They unfold when they get to site. And their footprint is about the same as the bathtub. And one of the reasons we do that is we're thinking about the whole supply chain. We're thinking about, you know, where it's located before it even gets to us. A good example of this is, anybody play golf here? Okay, golf, okay? So you use a buggy occasionally? You walk? Okay, I live in California, I use a buggy, it's hot. Okay, don't feel bad for me. But would you like to guess the design standard for the windscreens, what wind speed or speed that they're designed to withstand? Think about how fast a golf buggy goes. Any guesses? 2 miles an hour, a little faster than that. 12? Okay, well the answer is it's 80 miles an hour. That's a hell of a golf cart, yeah? Now, why do you think that is? It's a very simple reason, because they put them on trucks that drive at 80 miles an hour to get to the golf club. Now, that way of thinking is why we created these bathroom kits, because we can put 10 of these on a truck, whereas we'd probably only get 2 or 3 on if we built them as a completely prefabricated unit. And that goes into everything we think about. And we'll talk about these dimensions, as we call them. Location is one of them a little bit later when we talk about where our technology is going. But we have to fundamentally think about every piece of the process that allows us to increase the productivity. So we have bathroom kits. Talked about these power grid systems. So here's a typical electrical room in the building. You know, it looks probably quite familiar to some people. Of course, they're often more sophisticated than this. But when you're thinking of fabrication and prefabricating a building and then thinking about how to do better energy management, you've got to think a little bit further ahead, have something better that could plug and play, if you like, such that as we put in the rest of the electronics into this building, make it IoT aware, for example, that we're using modern systems that are easier upgradable. So we designed our own energy system, management system. And this thing comes in a cabinet, sits in the corner, completely upgradable. Everything can be loaded in, loaded out by USB or wirelessly. And obviously you can manage across multiple buildings on the campus using these types of devices. So a really important foundation element for us to be able to deliver faster, better, less expensive buildings that then could be run less expensively is to get to this level of detail. Same came true when we looked at air conditioning and HVAC. Obviously, anyone who's had to think about coordination of heating and ventilation within a building, you have my sympathies, and we're still going to have to do that in a lot of buildings for a long time. But why can't we make it a little more simple? If you stayed in a hotel and you've had one of these big noisy kind of air conditioning units, I got one in my room actually this week, and it kind of, you know, comes on full power and it goes off. Noisy, terribly inefficient, incredibly difficult to manage within the building, and not particularly easy to maintain either. So we didn't like that. We didn't think it fitted either our aesthetics or the way that we needed to manage heating and ventilation in the building. So we designed our own Katerra thermal air conditioner, and you can just about see it. It's that tall rectangle that you can see up there on the wall. Now this is also IoT enabled. So each one of these, if you have one of these in every room in a hotel, for example, or every room in your house, they daisy chain together and they can be coordinated back to our energy management system such that you can manage the whole of your house through these ultra-quiet, ultra-efficient heating and ventilation systems. This one surprised me as well, is we said, okay, we could buy our faucets from Kohler and our bathroom pedestals, but here's the big problem. By the time a faucet, a bathroom pedestal gets onto a site, it's been shipped from a factory to a global distributor, from a global distributor to a local distributor, and probably from there to a local reseller before it actually gets to you on site. Now, one, that makes predicting your supply really, really difficult, and two, think about the amount of people who got paid. So the other reason we look at vertically aligning our supply chain is such that we buy from the factories at scale, and then we deliver at a better price. So you can pick a higher quality at a lower price, and it's going to come with assurances on when it can be delivered, because we're in control of our supply chain. We can tell you this early. Very important kind of piece of the puzzle, how Katerra works. And not only that, so not only do we source, if you like, a Kohler bathroom set from the Chinese distributor or manufacturer of that particular element, we're actually designing our own things as well. So we're trying to take every part of that building and increase the quality, because we can see that there's now the need for higher quality at the same price you might have paid before after all the distributors got paid. So that means it's unlocking a lot of profitability for us that otherwise couldn't be realized. So we designed for manufacturing and assembly, enabling us to create building platforms. So how many architects in here? Okay, how many architects, put your hands up vigorously if you think that prefabrication is going to make creativity even better. Okay, about 10% of you put your arms up. Okay. I think when we look at the opportunities around prefabrication and digital manufacturing, we're not fooling ourselves that it's going to be right for every type of building. However, we are trying to kill the myth that every building is a prototype. We are trying to kill the idea that there aren't a lot of buildings that could be delivered at a higher quality in more multiple configurations than we do today, if only we had the means and the ways to do that, and the tools, if you like, and the configurable options that could be prefabricated. And that's why we built these platforms. So the idea really is that every part of this building above slab, we may go below ground at some point in the future, but everything from slab up is effectively something you could order off the shelf. And of course, that's not a new idea. What is probably more of a new idea, that all these things are developed in a BIM system. They look and they feel and they respond just in the same way as most buildings that you'd experience. But we're looking at the ways that we can either panelize or modularize or create these kits such that the way they can be delivered on site can be more predictable, at a more predictable cost, and also at a higher quality for a lower cost. And they don't have to be ugly. Now, okay, I realize that some of you might think this isn't the most wonderful thing you've ever seen, but honestly, in the USA, if you saw some of the alternatives that are built, to cost, and then they're cost engineered down, such that the minimum viable amount of money could be spent on creating them, we're actually seeing that the Katerra platforms, our chassis, if you like, are giving a much better product to customers. And just from the same chassis, it is, trust me, the same chassis, you could have a completely different treatment. Or maybe you like something, that's a little bit more modern. Really, all these options are available. And we're only going to get better and better at this. So you saw there was K1, K2, K3, K4. That's going to keep going. We're going to be launching our K3 building platforms in September. We already went through K1 and K2. K1 was really bad. It wasn't good, but we learned a ton from it. And as we get into K4 is where we really think that we're going to turn the corner and actually really solve a lot of these challenges. And one of the big things that we notice as we've gone through this process is we can see this increase in productivity or the decrease in time it takes to get these drawings out, get these drawings delivered. Now, it was very interesting to us to see this happen this quickly, but you probably can see that SDs have gone from being the thing that you spend the least time on to the thing you spend the most time on. Obviously, DDs are still sitting there in the middle, but CDs become effectively not less important, but very easy to create. So the CD part of the process becomes almost automatic out of those configurable options. That means a lot of things can start to happen now. We can now start to think about our building program much, much earlier. If I've done a sketch viability using this type of way of thinking, then I probably can build a building program much earlier if only I had the data easily available with my systems to tell me what the costs are, the labor loads are, the relative location of these things to where my site is. You can see that this is where our thinking goes, and this is how we can potentially bring in this huge jump in productivity we're looking for. Let's show you where this ends with the single-family housing. Now, we just put out in the press that we're building around 60,000 houses in, I thought it was 6,000 houses, sorry, this year in Saudi Arabia. And the way we won that project is we were set this 48-hour challenge. Now, this is with precast concrete, but I think it's interesting to see, I know it's going to look a little flunky in places, because the grass isn't real, okay? That didn't grow in 48 hours. Sorry to be abrupt, but I'm told I've got to keep moving. So we're looking at plenty of other building platforms as well. And so we're really focusing on residential right now. A lot of the reason that is because just like in the UK, just like in many places in the world, there's this global shortage of housing. Just in California, we know we've got to build about 1 million a year to keep up with demand. And so it's an obvious place for us to start. It's an obvious place for us to look at modularization. But we are looking at other things as well. So how many people here have worked with cross-laminated timber? You see, that's great. That's great. Okay, that would not happen in the USA. So we made a big bet on cross-laminated timber. And I'm not going to be able to show the video, I don't think, if I'm going to keep on. I can? Okay. There's a really interesting video because a guy called Michael Green, who's probably the authority on cross-laminated timber in North America, who we recently acquired his company and brought him in-house. We have built a factory in Spokane, which has just gone live, that's going to create roughly 25% of the world's demand for cross-laminated timber. Just let that sink in for a moment. And that's the first of 3 we're going to be building over the next 18 months. So we're betting huge on cross-laminated timber. We know we can go up to 18 stories now, and this is one of the first examples. I think I'm going to I like this slide because some of the things you can do with CLT, particularly in the US market, overcome so many issues for us. But I'll let Michael talk about it.
The world needs to move to these advanced wood buildings and be delivering better quality buildings that are more sensitive to the environment and produce more affordable and also just a better quality of life for people. When we got to know Katerra, we realized they were going to change everything with this new model.
The CLT is cross-laminated timber, and it is a composite building material made up of alternating layers of sawn lumber. So they can be different species of wood that we source locally and are able to put into large format panels. And it fundamentally changes the way we design buildings. It allows us to innovate into building typologies that can extend above 5 or 6 stories all the way up to 18 stories. Those might be better performing in ability to resist natural hazards such as earthquakes, but also allows us to improve the acoustic qualities of the building.
By choosing to be efficient in the design, it means that it can be built in a factory. The parts can be delivered to the site, put together really quickly, really quietly. Buildings go together fast, they're assembled, and they're very high quality buildings, unlike the way we think about prefabricated buildings in the past. Better environmental footprint, better climate footprint, better energy footprint, pretty much across the board. These are the ability that Katerra's model can improve vastly on the way we currently do things.
As a manufacturer for cross-laminated timber, we are investing in the necessary research and development of new systems to ensure that CLT has code-compliant application across all building types and uses.
One of our objectives is to make sure that these materials meet the highest standards in the industry and, in fact, exceed them.
Katerra is building a CLT factory in Spokane, Washington, in the inland northwest, so that we can source locally from public and private forests that are in need of fuel reduction to prevent wildfires. That positioning allows us to acquire very high quality, slow growing fiber that then can be easily shipped to our main markets on the West Coast. We're here at the Composite Materials and Engineering Center at Washington State University. This press is one section of 10 that will eventually go into our factory in Spokane. We delivered this press here early so that we could pre-qualify the product, so when we get production lines up and running, that we can hit the ground running and deliver sooner out of the factory. The research and development activities in cross-laminated timber help deliver a cost-competitive and high-performance building technology.
Katerra, I think, will be a huge step from where we are today into the future.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some software then. So to go into this, the one thing that should have been obvious, I think, is that we're thinking a lot about the data. An interesting example is because we own our CLT factories, we know, for example, where every knot is in every board, in every piece of that laminate, in every piece of beam or panel that comes out of those factories. And we must have a way of making sure we lock in that data in a way that it's persistent and accessible all the way through the process, just in case we need a remedial, just in case there's a failure. We need to very quickly pinpoint what the issue may be. That needs us to have this persistent data platform available throughout the process. And we're thinking about these 6 dimensions. So when we say platform, I know some people already are going, that's not a platform, or that might be a platform, it's an environment. Really, we're thinking about these 6 things: cost, schedule, materials, labor, performance, and location. We feel if we can have the data on those 6 things always available within every element of the building, then we're able to make much better, earlier, faster decisions. Because if we know all about this information for everything that's in our supply chain, then we can do a lot better. And that's what led us to create this thing called Katerra Apollo. About roughly 2.5, 3 years ago, we kind of looked around for technologies to support where the Katerra vision was going, and we couldn't find what we needed. Yes, there is a lot of software out there, but what we found was that either it wasn't configurable the way we needed it, couldn't really customize it, or it was just not moving at the pace that our company was. Think about that, 0 to 5,000 people in under 4 years. So, you think about strategy, and then you think about laying this in. It starts to become very obvious that we have to look at what's available in the market. There's a lot of stuff. It's not there. So we have to think about why are those things broken right now? Now, this earlier persistent actionable data is it's a bit of a mouthful, but it kind of underlies everything we do with the software and how we think about what type of contextual tool is needed at every part of that process. It means that we have to think a lot harder about cost and schedule. I mean, there's very few tools out there that integrate cost and schedule early in the process. Are there any estimators in the audience? Excellent. Okay. To me, estimation is professional guessing. And they're very good at it. It's very good, but really it's making up for a horrible gap that we have in our process. And BIM's not really solving that, okay? BIM's made things a lot better, but we still have these horrible gaps that we lose information or we have to recreate information through that process. And very little of it is attached to this idea of constructability. We don't train our architects really very well about constructability. We certainly don't train people to use Revit around constructability, or very few. Maybe some firms here that are better than others. So if that is a truism, what can we do with our Apollo kind of strategy that doesn't have to anchor ourselves to solving those problems first? Okay, rather than think about, rely on our memories and the things that, that we have to solve, what about the opportunities of the future? Oh, I'm going to don't have time for that. So I had some great conversations last night with some of the other speakers and some of you in a bar, of course, and this buzzword kind of thing came out, and I wanted to kind of share a slide. This is a slide for internal use only normally, but I thought I'd share it here. And it kind of talks about how we think about these technologies and how it affects our strategy. There are these kind of layers that we have to go through to get to the opportunity around data. The first thing is the descriptive layer. What's happening. There's this thing around, basically science proves, everything. Without the data, without the science, you can't really make any prescriptive guesses. You can't train algorithms without having the data, without having the facts. And people make a lot of mistakes around this. And so we know we have to get this table stakes foundational piece done. We call that Apollo Construct. It's an application that's built on this platform that we'll be shipping by the end of the year. And yes, it's a construction management solution, but fully embedded with estimating, with budgeting, with bidding, with scheduling, and everything you need to basically deliver your construction project. And that starts, by the way, a long time before the construction managers are loading up names into that tool. Then we get into the diagnostic. Yes, we're using blockchain technologies. Yes, we're trying to make sure that no data is lost through that process. It doesn't really matter what the technology is. It's about what the outcome is you're trying to get to. Once we have these in place, we start to think about training. We start to think about, okay, now we have this data available, and we are going to be inviting more and more companies to use these tools, so we'll be able to anonymize and train the machines even better than they can be just with our data to get into real machine learning. So we can go from that kind of predictive into prescriptive. Now, we call this decision automation. So for all those who talk about augmented reality, it's really cool, but really what you're trying to do is make decisions, and you're trying to make decisions with data. And you can't get to the final one, which is affirmative, which is just go do it. I'll take care of it for you, unless you build on these foundations. So this earlier actionable data is going to be the foundation that we use to get to our end game. We call it Apollo. We think of it in the classic 4 phases, and we call it insight, connect, construct, and operate. And yes, we're building it from an API. Everything starts, we're on a microservices platform. Everything we develop on this platform is built on exactly the same platform that will be available to anyone else in the industry to use when we publish these towards the end of the year. Of course, these third-party integrations are needed because we can't do everything. Federation is the only way that you can get to the end result. We're going to continue to develop applications that we feel will be best in class for our needs in Katerra, and whenever we feel that there's something to be available to everyone else in the industry, we'll make them available to everybody. These are some of the software running. How are we doing on time? Not getting the signal. So on the top left, this is our scheduling. So that's our Insight app. This is where we can look at a piece of land and very early do sketch viability. You know, we take a lot of data that we can download from the net. We sign contracts and licenses with all the data sources. The idea is you find a parcel, and very quickly you can go through multiple strategies, multiple materials, and start building out a prototype, if you like, program, including cost schedule, and how you need to load it up for labor for the whole of that project. Of course, we know we iterate that during the pre-construction phase to something that we want to sign a contract on, but all that information is available up front because we control the supply chain, so we can do that internally. The important thing about scheduling for us was, obviously we're a big Primavera P6 user just like everybody else, but access to that tool is tough to give to everyone in the ecosystem in Katerra, and there's only certain parts of it that are really relevant. The other problem we had is we weren't loading it up for cost and labor very well, and when we went through change orders, it was very torturous to change it. So we decided we'd bundle that into the platform and make that part of the entire process. So we don't think about it as much as we used to. On the bottom left, this is where we think about components within a building. Again, I go back to we're in control of our supply chain, so we can load up our models or take a model from a third party. We still work with our architects outside of Katerra and very quickly populate that with materials and components that we know exactly when they're going to arrive. We know exactly how much labor it's going to take to put them into a building. And we're actually just going through the process of making all those features available in Revit. We're going to be very agnostic about which design tools we use, so it'll be available in just about any platform you need to use. So a lot of exciting things to do that we're going to be delivering. Don't always look that sexy because we're really focused on the data part of these right now, but it's more and more the visual side of them, and the UX and UI will be developed as we bring these to market. Are we done? Okay, so I was going to show an example project we just ran called K90. I'll just describe what it was. So K90 was us putting all these ideas together and saying, okay, if we're going to run a project that typically took anything from 6 to 9 months, let's set ourselves a wildly audacious goal. We called it K90 for 90 days. And I'd invite you to go and look at it. It's on YouTube. You can check it out. And we actually delivered the whole building in 86 days from slab up. Now, that was just the first attempt. We were pleased with the result, obviously. Next project we're going to be starting in the middle of this year or later this year is going to be K60, 60 days, and after that, K30. So we're going to keep pushing on these things. I hope I get the chance to come back and tell you more about this in the future. This is probably the first time we've spoken, really, outside of very small meetings. So I'm very happy to have been invited, very happy to have had your time, and please ask me any questions in the corridor. Thank you.